Imagine this. You're at an airport, going through the usual routine of security checks. But this time, something goes terribly wrong. You're singled out for a strip search, even though you know you've done nothing wrong. You're confused, frustrated, and starting to feel humiliated. But the worst part, it's happening to you because of the color of your skin. This isn't just a random occurrence. This is a story that unfolds with shocking twists. And it all begins when a black woman, traveling on what should have been a routine flight, finds herself the target of a racial profiling incident that no one should ever have to experience. As the minutes drag on and the search intensifies, she becomes more and more aware of the injustice she's facing. But it's not just about the humiliation of the moment. It's about a deeper issue, one that many people have faced throughout history: racial discrimination. For her, this strip search isn't just about the physical violation, but about the emotional and psychological toll that comes with being treated like a criminal simply because of the way she looks. But just as she's beginning to feel utterly defeated, something unexpected happens. The tension in the room is palpable. And then, out of nowhere, the doors burst open. It's the Secret Service. Why are they here? What's going on? Was this whole situation more than it seemed? This story doesn't just stop at racial profiling. It opens the door to a world of hidden connections, mysterious motives, and a much bigger picture than anyone could have imagined. As the Secret Service storms in, the woman begins to understand that there's far more at stake than just a routine airport security check. What are they really looking for? Who gave the orders? Why was she targeted? And most importantly, what happens next? The shocking truth behind these questions won't be revealed just yet. Stay tuned, because this story is only getting started, and the answers might change everything you thought you knew about the systems that are meant to protect us. As the door swung open and the Secret Service agents stormed in, the tension in the room skyrocketed. The woman, still trembling from the ordeal, tried to gather her thoughts. Her mind raced with a mixture of confusion and fear. What were they here for? Why had they entered so suddenly, so forcefully? These questions spun in her head as she stared at the agents, all dressed in their usual black suits, with no expression to give away their intentions. But what had led to this moment? It wasn't just a random security check. For weeks, she'd been feeling the weight of constant scrutiny. Traveling as a black woman, especially in a world so divided by race, wasn't always easy. She brushed off the subtle glances, the whispered comments. But this time, it was different. This time, the eyes that watched her weren't just judgmental. They were calculating. She hadn't felt this uncomfortable in years. Back in the waiting area before all of this happened, she'd noticed the shift. She had been standing in line, trying to stay focused on her upcoming flight. But something about the way the security guards looked at her felt off. It was almost as if they had decided, without any reason, that she was the one who should be singled out. Other passengers breezed through, but when she stepped forward, things changed. A glance, then a whisper, and suddenly, she was being pulled aside for additional screening. At first, she thought it was a mistake. But then came the request, no, the demand for a strip search. Her heart sank. She knew there was no way she could refuse. The fear of what might happen if she did, or worse, if she tried to fight back, kept her silent. She'd been here before. Not literally in this exact position, but in countless moments where people had treated her differently because of the color of her skin. She felt it in her bones, the weight of generations of racism. But this time, it wasn't just a rude comment or a harsh look. It was an assault on her dignity. Minutes stretched on as the search continued. But now, with the entrance of the Secret Service agents, the situation had turned a corner. Their faces were unreadable as they approached her, but she could feel the energy shift in the room. The officers who had been handling her started to look uneasy, exchanging glances, perhaps uncertain of how to react. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew one thing. This was bigger than just her. Something was going on, and she had no idea what. The lead agent, a tall man with dark sunglasses, despite the indoor lighting, stepped toward her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm, but with an authority that made her stomach churn, "we need you to come with us." She didn't know whether to feel relief or dread. Why would the Secret Service be involved in this? Had they known something she didn't? Were they protecting her, or was there something far more sinister at play? "Excuse me," one of the security officers tried to interject, his voice shaky. "We've just completed our standard procedure. There's no need for." The agent cut him off with a sharp gesture. "We're taking her." Now, the tension between the two groups was palpable, like a powder keg waiting to explode. The woman didn't have time to process what was happening before she was guided away, her heart pounding in her chest. As they walked down the narrow corridor, the Secret Service agents seemed to be trying their best to remain calm, but the air was thick with something she couldn't quite place. They led her to a small room, and the door clicked shut behind them. For a brief moment, everything was silent. Then the agent spoke again, this time more softly. "We've been watching you," he said, his voice less formal, almost apologetic. "We didn't want this to happen. We're here to protect you. There's a situation, and we believe you might be involved. Or rather, you might be a target." Her mind raced. "A target? What are you talking about? I'm just trying to get home." The agent looked at her, eyes searching, before he replied. "You've been caught in something much bigger than you realize. You're not just a victim of racial profiling today. You're part of a much larger scheme, something that involves national security." She could barely comprehend what he was saying. National security? How was she involved? She had no connections to anything like that. She was just a woman on her way to visit family, trying to live her life. But the agent continued, his tone urgent now. "This is bigger than we can explain here. But trust us when we say you've been caught in the crosshairs of something dangerous. We need you to stay calm, stay with us, and keep this quiet. The people who did this to you, the ones who set you up, they're still out there. And we have no idea who's behind it. But we will find them." Her thoughts were spinning, the words feeling surreal. Was she truly in danger? Had this all been some kind of setup? If so, who was pulling the strings? What did they want with her? Outside the room, the echoes of footsteps reverberated through the corridor. Something was happening, but it wasn't clear who was on what side. The agents, their intentions seemingly noble, still had their secrets, just like everyone else. And just as she thought she might have a moment to breathe, the door flung open again. Another agent entered, this time looking more disheveled, a look of urgency in his eyes. "We have a problem," he said, his voice low, almost strained. "They're moving faster than we expected. It's not just her anymore. There are others. We have to get her out of here now." The room seemed to freeze as the two agents exchanged a look, one that spoke volumes of a danger she still didn't fully understand. What was it that they were trying to protect her from? And why, after everything that had just happened, did she still feel like she was just a pawn in someone else's game? The tension was suffocating now, and she had no idea how it would end. The agent's words hung in the air, thick with urgency. "We have to move her now." There was no time for questions, no time for explanations. The woman's heart pounded as she followed the agents, still trying to piece together the fragments of what was happening. The uncertainty, the fear, it all swirled in her mind like a storm. And the more she tried to make sense of it, the more elusive the truth seemed to be. Who were these people? Why were they telling her that she was in danger, that she was caught in something far bigger than a simple airport security check? As they rushed through the building, the sound of hurried footsteps echoing off the walls, she tried to focus on the one thing that made sense: survival. She didn't know who was targeting her or why, but there was one thing she knew for sure. She couldn't let herself be another pawn in someone else's game. She had to escape, had to find a way out of this mess. Her eyes scanned the hallway for any sign of an exit, but it all looked the same: sterile, cold, and without any real answers. The agent who had spoken before turned to her, his expression serious, almost sympathetic. Listen carefully. You're being targeted by a group that's been manipulating systems like this for years. They've had people in powerful positions, orchestrating events, creating distractions, and covering their tracks. What you experienced today was just the beginning. They planned it, everything from the racial profiling to the false alarm about national security. They're trying to sow chaos. It was a lot to process, and yet somehow it felt like a slap of cold water waking her from the confusion. She could almost see the puzzle pieces falling into place. The unfair treatment, the sudden strange involvement of the Secret Service, it was all connected. These people, whoever they were, had been pulling strings in the shadows, and she had been caught in the web without even realizing it. We think they've been using racially motivated incidents like this one to distract from bigger operations, the agent continued. And now that we know you've been part of it, we need to get you somewhere safe before they find out we've figured it out. Before she could respond, the sound of footsteps grew louder, more frantic. The agents exchanged a glance, and without warning, they pushed her into a side room, locking the door behind them. Her pulse raced as she backed into the corner, confused and terrified. Were the people they were protecting her from closing in on them? Was there even a way to stay ahead of them? The agents turned to her, their faces tight with resolve. Listen, the lead agent said again. We've got eyes on the ones who orchestrated all of this. We've identified them, and we've traced their connections. But it's bigger than just them. This goes deep, and we need to get you somewhere where you're safe from whatever they have planned next. Her mind was still trying to catch up, but it was all starting to make sense. The racial profiling at the airport had been orchestrated, designed to push her into a situation where the agents would be forced to intervene. Everything was a setup, a calculated move in a game that she hadn't even realized she was playing. Why me? She finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. What do they want with me? The agent's face darkened. You were chosen because you have ties to someone who's been investigating them. Someone close to you has been digging into their operations, and now they think you know too much. But we can't let them get to you. Her stomach churned. The more she thought about it, the more everything started to align. The people behind this weren't just looking for power. They were manipulating systems and trying to create chaos at a national level. She had unknowingly been pulled into a conspiracy much larger than her own experience of racial discrimination. A sudden crash echoed from the hallway. She froze, eyes wide with panic. The agents reacted swiftly, pulling her into a safe corner of the room and positioning themselves to block any potential threat. The door burst open, but it wasn't just more agents. It was the very people who had been behind the entire setup. Black-clad figures with the same cold, calculating look in their eyes. For a split second, everything seemed to slow down. Then the agents made their move, pushing her toward the back exit as they engaged in a brief but intense standoff with the intruders. She couldn't quite believe it. This was real. The conspiracy, the danger, it wasn't just some figment of her imagination. She was in the middle of something huge, and the stakes were higher than she could have ever guessed. As the agents led her to safety, she couldn't help but look back at the chaos that had erupted. She had narrowly escaped, but she knew this wouldn't be the end. The people behind all of this were still out there, still watching. The system they had manipulated was broken, but that didn't mean it was over. There was a deeper fight ahead, one that would take everything she had to stay alive and protect those she loved. The agents didn't speak much after that. Their silence spoke volumes. They knew the danger wasn't over. The woman, though physically safe for the moment, felt the weight of everything she had learned begin to sink in. The conspiracy was far-reaching, and they hadn't exposed all of it yet. As she was escorted to a safe house, she couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. It wasn't just about the profiling. It wasn't just about the humiliation she'd faced at the airport. It was about a system that had been manipulated by powerful people, using race and fear as their tools. And now she had a choice. Stay quiet, remain hidden, or fight back. Her life, her safety, and perhaps even the future of others depended on what she decided to do next. In that moment, one thing became clear. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun.